Imagine navigating a world where most are doomed to repeat mistakes, ignore logic, and betray reason. Imagine gaining the power to anticipate every blunder before it happens and using it to your advantage. Today, we reveal Machiavelli's darkest theory, the ruthless truths about human stupidity that will forever change how you see, influence, and survive among men in every corner of life. From the halls of power to the streets of our cities, human stupidity reigns supreme. It undermines decisions, destroys alliances, and repeats catastrophes endlessly. Today, we confront a truth few dare to admit. The very people we trust, fear, or depend upon are often blind to reality. This is not merely misjudgment. It is a dangerous, predictable force. And to survive, you must understand it. Human stupidity is the silent, unrelenting force that governs the affairs of men more than virtue or intelligence ever could. It is not capricious, nor is it fleeting. It persists through centuries, repeating itself with mechanical consistency. History is littered with the corpses of those who believed otherwise, those who assumed that men would act rationally, that lessons of past calamities would guide their actions. And yet, time and again, they have fallen prey to the same errors, the same predictable follies, as if the world itself conspires to demonstrate that stupidity is not a quirk, but a law of human nature. To recognize this is not merely to observe, it is to arm oneself. For those who see, who understand, who anticipate, there is power. For those who ignore, there is only ruin. Consider the great empires of old. Rome, at the height of its dominion, was a civilization of immense wisdom, yet even it succumbed to repeated errors of judgment. Its leaders, intoxicated with pride and blinded by ambition, extended their reach beyond what prudence could sustain. Generals engaged in campaigns without foresight. Emperors indulged in decadence, while the foundations of power crumbled beneath them. And the populace, swayed by promises and spectacles, failed to discern the danger until it was too late. It was not a lack of knowledge that doomed them, it was the failure to apply that knowledge wisely. Stupidity is unyielding because it does not vanish in the presence of learning. It merely waits patient for opportunity to assert itself. Even in the smallest acts, the repetition of error is evident. Observe the markets, where men gamble fortunes on speculation, convinced of their unique insight, only to fall prey to the same cycles of greed and panic that have claimed countless predecessors. Witness the leaders who enter negotiations believing in their invincibility, ignoring the lessons of history, certain that this time fortune favors them. Yet time and again, the same mistakes are repeated. The world offers no surprises to those who study it keenly. It only offers lessons, and yet humanity refuses to learn them. The folly of one generation is the inheritance of the next, and those who do not recognize this will forever be its victims. What makes human stupidity so formidable is its predictability. It follows patterns that can be studied, anticipated, and for the shrewd, exploited. Men overestimate themselves, underestimate danger, and misplace their trust. They are prone to pride, vanity, and envy, and these emotions cloud judgment more effectively than any external threat. The wise do not attempt to reform human nature. They observe it, chart its tendencies, and use it as a tool. To attempt to fight against it directly is to engage in a battle already lost. To use it to one's advantage is the path of mastery. History offers endless examples of this principle in action. Consider the great conflicts of Europe, where alliances shifted not through reasoned calculation, but through fear, envy, and misjudgment. Kings and generals, believing in their exceptional wisdom, ignored counsel, dismissed warnings, and acted with arrogance. Their defeats were not born of chance, they were the result of predictable human folly, and those who understood this, who anticipated the errors of others, were able to manipulate events to their benefit, often without striking a single blow. Stupidity, when observed and understood, becomes a lever, a force that can be moved to serve one's ends rather than crush them. Even beyond the battlefield, human unreason manifests with equal clarity. In courts of justice, Men are swayed by appearances, deceived by rhetoric, and led astray by their own biases. In commerce, decisions are made not from careful calculation, but from impulse and fear. In governance, policies fail because leaders are blinded by ideology, loyalty, or personal ambition. The repetition of these errors is not random, it is systematic, inherent in the structure of human thought. To witness the world without understanding this is to wander blindly into calamity. To understand it is to gain foresight, a weapon more powerful than armies or wealth. And yet, there is a certain inevitability in this truth that even the wise must accept. Stupidity is not an enemy to be vanquished. It is a constant, a force as natural as gravity. It does not yield to argument, nor can it be eradicated by logic. It persists in the humblest servant and the greatest sovereign alike. One may attempt to educate, to enlighten, or to guide, but the deeper currents of human error remain. To confront this reality is not pessimism, it is clarity. It is the recognition that the world operates not according to ideals, but according to the enduring weaknesses of those who inhabit it. Thus, the prudent man does not rail against the folly of others, nor does he despair at the inevitability of error. He studies it, maps it, and positions himself accordingly. He observes the predictable repetitions of history, the patterns of decision and misjudgment, and he acts with foresight. In every council, every negotiation, every encounter, he anticipates the mistakes others will make, knowing that their unreason is as constant as the rising sun. And in this anticipation lies power, for while the foolish stumble blindly, he moves with precision, guided by the certainty that human stupidity is both relentless and predictable. Human beings are not the rational creatures they claim to be. They are creatures of impulse, of desire, of fear, and of envy. Logic may exist in their minds, but it is often subordinated to the whims of passion. Pride blinds judgment, anger clouds perception, and hope creates illusions that no truth can penetrate. The world is governed not by reason, but by the turbulent currents of human emotion, and any man who fails to recognize this is doomed to be swept along helplessly, a victim of forces he cannot control. To understand this is to understand power itself. For those who master the manipulation of emotion gain an influence that exceeds brute strength or clever argument. Throughout history, leaders who relied solely on intellect have often found themselves defeated by those who understood the passions of men. A general may devise a perfect strategy, but if his soldiers are driven by fear, that strategy will collapse. A ruler may issue laws grounded in reason and fairness, yet if the populace is inflamed by anger or jealousy, the law will be ignored and chaos will reign. Reason alone does not command obedience, nor does it inspire loyalty. Emotions, in contrast, move men to action without hesitation or deliberation. They are immediate, compelling, and often irresistible. To wield them is to wield true power. Consider the art of governance. A prince may understand justice and prudence, yet if he cannot appeal to the desires, fears, and aspirations of his people, he will never secure their loyalty. The wise ruler studies the emotions of his subjects as carefully as he studies his enemies. He knows that flattery, fear, hope, and anger are more potent tools than edicts or proclamations. By appealing to these emotions, he shapes behavior not through logic, but through instinct, guiding men as a shepherd guides his flock, anticipating their reactions before they themselves understand them. The manipulation of emotion is subtle, invisible, yet decisive. It is the unseen hand that determines the outcome of battles, elections, and negotiations alike. Even in the arena of war, emotions dictate the course of events more than strategy ever could. History offers countless examples. Armies that outnumbered their opponents, trained with precision and led by brilliant commanders, have fallen to defeat simply because the men's morale faltered, because fear spread faster than courage, because anger clouded judgment. Conversely, a smaller force, led by a leader who understands the hearts of his soldiers, can triumph against overwhelming odds. Napoleon, Hannibal and Alexander the Great all recognized this truth. They did not merely command troops, they inspired them. They instilled fear in their enemies. They played upon hope and despair alike. The victories of these men were as much a triumph of psychological insight as of tactical brilliance. In commerce, the principle is equally powerful. Markets rise and fall not solely due to rational analysis, but because of human greed, panic, and speculation. Traders buy at inflated prices out of fear of missing opportunity and sell in frenzied panic at the slightest whisper of danger. Entire fortunes are lost or made based on collective emotional swings rather than careful calculation. A merchant or investor who understands this can predict the irrationality of others, profit from their impulses, and avoid being caught in the same traps. The rational mind, when isolated from the study of emotion, is a poor guide in a world dominated by passion. Even personal relationships are subject to this truth. Friendships crumble, alliances fracture, and reputations are destroyed, not because of reasoned decisions, but because of envy, resentment, and desire. Men betray, manipulate, and deceive not because it is logical, but because emotion compels them. The prudent observer recognizes that every word spoken, every action taken, is filtered through the lens of human feeling. Appealing to reason alone is often useless. Appealing to emotion is decisive. Those who fail to master this truth find themselves manipulated by the passions of others, like a ship tossed upon a stormy sea without rudder or sail. Moreover, emotion is self-reinforcing. Fear breeds panic, and panic spreads faster than knowledge. Pride leads to arrogance, and arrogance invites miscalculation. Hope blinds judgment, and despair paralyzes action. These currents create predictable patterns, which the shrewd can study and exploit. The wise understand that while emotion cannot be eradicated, it can be anticipated, guided, and directed. To control men, one does not seek to destroy their passions, but to harness them, to channel them toward outcomes favorable to one's own ends. A ruler, a general, a merchant, or even a cunning individual in private life who masters this art gains influence greater than any law or weapon could grant. Finally, the manipulation of emotion is subtle and often invisible. It is not always overt threats or grand gestures that bend men's wills. Sometimes it is a glance, a word, a rumor that sets the machinery of desire or fear into motion. The most successful manipulator of human affairs is not always the loudest or most violent, but the one who perceives the hidden strings that move men and tugs them without detection. Emotion is the current beneath the river of life, unseen yet unstoppable, and the man who understands it navigates with foresight, while others struggle in its turbulence. Human beings are naturally inclined to follow those they perceive as powerful, even when obedience defies reason or morality. The instinct to submit to authority is neither accidental nor trivial. It is an ancient, deeply rooted mechanism, honed over centuries of survival and social organization. Yet, while it may serve the collective in times of crisis, it simultaneously exposes men to manipulation, error, and disaster. Those who understand this principle wield a kind of silent dominion over others, for authority blinds judgment and obedience corrodes independent thought. The foolish march willingly to the orders of the powerful, often into ruin, while the observant anticipate their actions and maneuver accordingly. Consider the leaders of history who relied upon unquestioning loyalty, expecting their subjects or armies to act with rational judgment. Time and again, disasters have occurred not because of strategic miscalculations, but because men obeyed without thought. Entire campaigns have been lost due to officers following orders blindly, without adjusting to circumstance, without question. The pattern repeats itself. Those who rely on obedience as a shield against uncertainty fail to account for the unthinking nature of those they command. Obedience, when divorced from reason, is a force as dangerous as any enemy army, and yet it remains one of the most reliable constants in human behavior. This phenomenon extends beyond warfare and politics into every corner of human interaction. In institutions, from schools to corporations to governments, people follow leaders not because the direction is wise, but because they are told to. Orders are obeyed, procedures followed, policies enacted, often in defiance of practical logic or ethical consideration. History demonstrates that when people surrender judgment to authority, errors multiply exponentially. Leaders who recognize this truth exploit it. Those who ignore it become victims of their own reliance on loyalty. The obedient man is predictable, and predictability is a tool that the cunning can wield with devastating effect. Moreover, the psychology of authority is subtle yet relentless. Men perceive those in power as inherently knowledgeable, as figures whose commands are infused with legitimacy, whether earned or not. This perception overrides critical thinking. The populace assumes that the person above them possesses insight, wisdom, or virtue beyond their own. As a result, they suppress doubt, ignore warning signs, and rationalize decisions that, in solitude, they might recognize as foolish. Obedience becomes a form of self-deception, a way for individuals to escape the burden of judgment, yet it binds them to outcomes over which they have little control. The shrewd recognize that authority is a double-edged sword. It inspires loyalty, yet it blinds those who wield it unquestioningly. History's most cunning rulers have exploited this instinct to remarkable effect. The art of manipulation lies not only in issuing commands, but in understanding the predictable obedience of others. From the manipulation of armies to the orchestration of political consensus, leaders have repeatedly harnessed obedience to achieve outcomes that mere persuasion or force could not. Napoleon, for instance, understood the value of structure and hierarchy, but he also comprehended that the soldier's obedience was rooted in respect for authority and the fear of disgrace. By appealing to both, he created a machine of loyalty and predictability that could outmaneuver even numerically superior forces. Authority, when combined with insight into human behavior, becomes not merely a position of power, but a lever for controlling events with precision. Obedience is also contagious. One man submits, and others follow. One officer acts without question, and the chain of command extends the folly across hundreds or thousands. This social reinforcement creates an environment where independent thought is suppressed, and collective error becomes inevitable. Entire communities, organizations, and nations are thus vulnerable to the failures of obedience, as the individual's loss of judgment multiplies through the group. The key to exploiting this is not confrontation but observation, to anticipate how obedience will manifest, to recognize the predictable paths that authority imposes on human behavior, and to position oneself advantageously within the system. Even outside of formal hierarchies, authority exerts its subtle control. People obey social norms, traditions, and cultural expectations as if they were commands, often with no conscious awareness. The desire to conform, to fit within a structure of perceived authority, leads to decisions that may contradict reason or self-interest. A clever observer can predict behavior based on these patterns, recognizing that what seems voluntary is, in fact, shaped by the invisible hand of authority. This insight allows the strategist to influence events, to nudge outcomes without direct intervention, and to anticipate the mistakes of others before they even recognize them. Authority breeds a unique kind of blindness, a willingness to accept the judgment of others over one's own. Those who obey without scrutiny are predictable in their errors, and predictability is the foundation of strategy. The Machiavellian observer does not decry this human tendency, he exploits it. By understanding the mechanisms of obedience, by anticipating the predictable folly it produces, one can maneuver with foresight, influence outcomes subtly, and seize advantage without overt confrontation. Obedience is not merely a social habit, it is a tool, and like any tool, it can be wielded by those who understand it, while those who ignore it are bound by its chains. Among the most insidious forces governing human behavior is the tendency toward self-deception. Men do not merely lie to others, they lie to themselves, creating illusions to preserve comfort, pride, and convenience. This deception is not a rare failing, it is universal, woven into the fabric of human thought. Every man who believes himself rational, just, or wise is in some measure a victim of his own delusions, and it is in recognizing this truth that the cunning find power. For those who perceive the illusions of others gain insight into their motivations, their weaknesses, and their predictable missteps. To underestimate self-deception is to surrender control. To exploit it is to command events before they occur. Self-deception operates in myriad ways, often invisible even to its bearer. A man overestimates his skill, his intelligence, or his understanding of events, convincing himself that he is immune to error. Pride clouds judgment, creating a veil that obscures reality. Ambition convinces him that his desires are reasonable and achievable, regardless of evidence to the contrary. He interprets setbacks as temporary or external, and success as proof of inherent superiority rather than circumstance. This constant distortion of perception renders men blind to the consequences of their actions and creates predictable patterns that the observant can anticipate. The world, for the self-deceived, is a distorted mirror. For the shrewd, it is a map of opportunity. Even the seemingly rational decisions of men are tainted by self-deception. A merchant who believes he is making careful investments is often guided by vanity, overconfidence, or the desire to appear successful. A leader who insists he acts for the good of his people is frequently motivated by ambition, fear of weakness, or the desire for legacy. A friend who professes loyalty may act from self-interest disguised as virtue. Self-deception is the lens through which human intentions are filtered, and it is a lens that the clever manipulate with ease. By understanding what men choose not to see, the strategist can anticipate actions, influence decisions, and shape outcomes without resistance. History is filled with men undone by their own illusions. Great generals have marched into disaster. Convinced of their infallibility, rulers have imposed policies that served their pride rather than their subjects. Statesmen have negotiated treaties believing in the loyalty of those whose loyalty was imaginary. Each disaster was not merely the result of external forces, but of the inner blindness that self-deception imposes. And each of these failures was predictable to those who observed human nature without illusion. For while men deceive themselves, the world remains constant, and those who perceive reality behind the mask of self-delusion wield extraordinary power. The mechanisms of self-deception are often subtle and insidious. A man interprets evidence selectively, embracing information that confirms his beliefs and dismissing that which challenges them. He invents justifications for actions he secretly doubts. He convinces himself of motives that align with his vanity, obscuring the truth of his desires. Even when confronted with undeniable facts, he rationalizes, excuses, or reinterprets them. This cognitive bias is not a weakness, but a constant in human nature, and it produces errors as inevitable as gravity. To study self-deception is to study the patterns of failure that it generates, and in those patterns lies the key to influence and control. The observant can exploit this in countless ways. By presenting information in a form that aligns with the self-deception of others, one can guide decisions and behavior without force or confrontation. By understanding the illusions that a person holds, one can anticipate their reactions, predict their choices, and manipulate outcomes to one's advantage. The self-deceived act not out of logic or morality, but out of the image they hold of themselves. They defend their illusions with vigor, resist contrary evidence, and often act against their own interests without awareness. Recognizing this allows the shrewd to operate in a space where others are blind, to move with certainty in a world of predictable errors. Self-deception is also contagious. Groups, like individuals, reinforce each other's illusions. A crowd convinces itself of the righteousness of its cause. A company magnifies its belief in a failing strategy. A a society rationalizes policies that contradict common sense. Collective self-deception magnifies the power of predictable error, creating waves of folly that sweep through communities, organizations, and nations. The perceptive observer uses this not as a point of despair, but as an opportunity, identifying weak points, exploiting consensus illusions, and positioning themselves to act decisively while others remain trapped in delusion. The universality of self-deception means that no man is immune, no situation is free from its influence, and no wisdom can completely eradicate it. Yet, for those who observe carefully, it is not merely a source of frustration, it is a map. By studying the illusions men hold about themselves, one can anticipate decisions, predict mistakes, and influence outcomes. Power, in this context, is not brute force or coercion, it is knowledge, the knowledge of what men refuse to see, the insight into the falsehoods they maintain, and the ability to act upon this understanding with precision. The self-deceived are blind, and the wise navigate among them with foresight and certainty. In the theater of human affairs, knowledge of men is the greatest weapon, and understanding their flaws is the foundation of mastery. Human stupidity is unyielding, repeating itself across centuries with predictable precision, and those who fail to anticipate it are doomed to stumble. Emotions, unrestrained and relentless, guide decisions more than reason ever could, and the one who manipulates these passions commands influence beyond mere force. Obedience to authority blinds judgment, creating predictable patterns in the actions of crowds and subordinates, a lever for the cunning to shape outcomes with subtlety and foresight. And above all, self-deception binds every man to illusions of his own making, a trap from which only the observant can profit. To navigate this world is not to impose virtue, nor to trust in the rationality of men, but to perceive, to anticipate, and to act with clarity that others lack. Power is not won by morality alone, nor by intellect in isolation. It is won by the understanding of human nature in its rawest, most unvarnished form. Those who recognize the patterns of error, the sway of emotion, the obedience to authority, and the illusions men maintain about themselves are not merely surviving, they are mastering the currents that govern life. In the end, the lesson is stark and uncompromising. The world is ruled not by reason, but by folly, and the wise do not rail against it, they exploit it. Observe, anticipate, and act, for in the predictable failures of others lies the path to dominance, and in the shadows of human weakness, the shrewd rise while the foolish repeat the same mistakes, generation after generation. The dark truths of human behavior are not to be feared. They are to be understood, harnessed, and wielded as instruments of survival and power.